Now, South Sudan's first Vice President, Dr. Riek Machar, prepares to take the stand in a highly contested tribunal in Juba. Machar's SPLM, a 10-10 party says the leader will present his defense tomorrow following charges linked to the Nasir incident. But the movement has strongly rejected the legitimacy of the court, describing it as politically motivated and a threat to the country's fragile peace process. At the center of the dispute are claims that the proceedings are being used to target opposition figures, undermine the Revitalised Peace Agreement, and derail efforts towards national unity. To unpack these developments, we're joined by Puok Both Baluang, who's the press secretary at the office of the first Vice President of the Republic of South Sudan. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome.
Good evening to you, and thank you for having me.
Now, as we try and get a deeper understanding, we know in terms of representation, why does the SPLM reject the legitimacy of this tribunal and argue that the process undermines the Revitalised Peace Agreement? Perhaps in what specific ways is the agreement being violated, as we try and get some information on the depth around the matter?
Well, thank you for the question. Firstly, we strongly reject the legitimacy of the so-called special court on the incidents of Nasir, starting from its unlawful establishment, because it was established by the Chief Justice of the Republic of South Sudan, and that exceeding his powers, because he doesn't have that power according to the South Sudan constitution. And we reject the so-called special court on Nasir, because the proceedings itself and also the procedures that preceded this trial has undertaken by President Salva Kiir and his group, such as the arbitrary detention and arrest of His Excellency Dr. Riek Machar, the first Vice President and Chairman and Commander-in-Chief of the SPLM-IO, plus the other leaders and members of the SPLM-IO on the backdrop of the Nasir incidents. And also we believe that the trial itself it's sham, or it is a pseudo trial. And our rejection is stemmed directly from being an instrument for a political and a tribal witch hunt to settle political discord, rather than an instrument for achieving justice.
So with those remarks, describing the proceedings as politically motivated and a tribal motivation, what evidence do you have to support such a claim?
Well, the 8 detainees, including Dr. Riek Machar, hail from one tribe, which is the Nuer tribe. The second evidence is that the SPLM-IG doesn't have any critical evidence. They have brought in a digital expert who analyzed the digital gadgets of the 8 accused, which has been confiscated unlawfully, and also has failed during the past 103 sessions to present a concrete evidence that the 8 accused really committed the charges that has been pressed against all of them. And so, the also, yes.
Oh, okay. Pardon my interruption, but just looking at what you've said about the Nasir incident, I mean, you've spoken about rejecting that. And on the other end, the government has essentially argued that this case is about accountability for the deadly Nasir incident. How do you respond to those who say victims deserve justice regardless of the political implications?
Well, in the agreement, there's a whole chapter talk about transitional justice,
Mhm.
and the SPLM-IO has spearheaded this file during the talks or the negotiations. We believe that all South Sudanese require to have justice and a fair trial for everything. Uh, we also have a living proof that there's a need for justice and accountability in South Sudan, because the main reasons why South Sudan went to war is based on the atrocities committed by President Salva Kiir and his militias against the innocent people that hail from the tribe called Nuer in South Sudan. Therefore, the incidents of Nasser itself, it was between the SSPDF or the forces that belong to President Salva Kiir's group and the armed youth. And the armed youth in South Sudan is a phenomenon. It is not only in the Nuer's land. It's also in the other regions of South Sudan. And there was an incident similar to what occurred in Nasser, particularly in area called in the state where President Salva Kiir himself hailed from. And the
Mhm.
same incidents that happened, a commander was killed by the armed youth.
So,
But we didn't
yeah.
see any logistic measures was taking, that are taken by the government, similarly to what happened in Nasser. So we
Mm.
believe the incidents of Nasser was orchestrated by the SPLM-IG to settle a political discord
Mm.
and target opponents.
So critics might argue that dismissing the court before the judgment perhaps will risk undermining South Sudan's own justice institutions. How do you balance demanding accountability on one end with maintaining confidence in the country's legal system?
Because the entire process lack legal jurisdiction, because the Nasser attack itself, we believe, which is used by the SPLM-IG as base for the ongoing pseudo trial, qualifies as a violations of ceasefire of the agreement, because similar incidents occurred prior to the incidents of Nasser. There's an incident happened in Western Equatoria State, in the place called Najiro, where a training center belonged to the SPLM was attacked by the SSPDF, and the commander was killed. So we believe these incidents of Nasser qualifies to be trialed, under the hybrid court, not as an established court by one party to settle a political discord.
And very quickly before we let you go, what role do you think regional bodies like IJAD and the African Union, as well as the international community, should be playing at a time like this? Because beyond tomorrow's defense, one also would like to get an understanding on what it's going to take to rebuild trust between President Salva Kiir's government and the SPLA MAIO, so that South Sudan can perhaps refocus on peace, elections, and some stability.
Well, I believe now the peace process in South Sudan, it's on its deathbed, and that requires an urgent intervention from the regional and international bodies, and there's a need for drastic measures from these bodies to be taken to salvage the peace and stability in South Sudan. These measures, we believe that we should kick a start with an immediate halt of this pseudo and political and tribal motivated trial against the leaders of the SPLM-IO, and also the immediate and unconditional release. These are conditions that has been set by the AU and also the UN,
Mm-hmm.
but they have felt on the deaf ears because the regime in Juba lacks political will to implement the peace agreement. So we believe that there's a need to implement these recommendations from the international and regional bodies Lastly, is there's a need to launch an inclusive dialogue will be convinced in a neutral venue under the supervision of the regional and international mediation that will deliver a genuine peace in South Sudan.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening and giving us that perspective. Puok Both Baluang, who's the press secretary at the office of the first vice president of the Republic of South Sudan.